I'm Mike.
I'm Sam. Let's get into it.
It ain't our ball. It ain't our ball. It ain't our ball. It's our ball, ain't it? It's our ball. Hey, it's our ball. It's our ball. Dame just laid the ball up down there. It's our ball.
Welcome to episode 47. RIP to Gale Sayers, passed away sadly this morning. But great athlete, great NFL player, one of the best running backs of all time in his short little career. But diving into week 2 action, looking at our records, Michael went 15-1, sadly losing on Monday night against the Saints Raiders game, which is pretty impressive. I went 13-3, which is pretty good. I picked the Bears. I picked the Giants over the Bears for some reason, which I don't know what was going. I had a feeling that would be an upset, but still a good record. The locks are still, you got to lock them in every week. But we're going to go into some games during this week, some of the highlights of performances. I think the big news for this week is the whole NFL was hit with the injury bug. I mean, Nick Bosa, Malik Hooker, Saquon Barkley, Solomon Thomas, Jimmy Garoppolo, Raheem Mostert. I mean, so many players got hurt. I think it's just going to, throughout the next couple of weeks, I think it's going to get progressively worse with the injuries because there was no preseason. So what do you think about the NFL, not going with the preseason, and this is the result of it?
Yeah, well, I know first and foremost, the NFL and kind of everybody kind of involved in the NFL is actually on a flight right now down to MetLife and kind of reviewing the field and looking at why there were so many ACL injuries specifically on that field on Sunday. Of course, the 49ers just being riddled with them, but I really don't even think the field was the issue per se. I definitely think it was what you were just alluding to, where no OTAs, no preseason, no real contact action to the point where it's just guys are bound to get hurt. I'm really surprised that this didn't come week 1. I'm not sure what kind of phenomenon could explain it taking a week for kind of the injury bug to hit, but it certainly hit really hard, and a lot of teams are just absolutely riddled with injuries.
I think each NFL's player's body was pretty fresh, so I think going into week 1 they weren't going to really be affected. But after your body takes a toll of one NFL game, then you go into another one, I think that's when it starts setting in. I think it's going to get worse because, you can't go from doing walkthroughs to full speed NFL games. You need that preseason and or pads and OTAs to kind of get your body slowly used to being hit every week, and that's why it's a bit of a problem for the players' health if they're going to be so injury riddled this whole year, and it's going to really affect kind of them some careers later down the road.
Yeah, certainly. And I know in the new CBA, a really big point of the players was to limit the amount of padded practices and the amount of practices that did involve hitting. But what that does is that just doesn't prepare them for game speed, and that doesn't prepare their body for getting hit so much. So I think if you would slowly kind of weave into hitting as OTAs, as training camp, as practices kind of progress, and you get more of those full speed game like practices under your belt, then I think we'll see less type of injuries in NFL games. So I think that's certainly a slight mistake made on the players, but playing football myself, I completely understand not wanting as many just padded practices as possible, because those are even tougher than the games. Those are really where all the plays are kind of made, where starters are made, but that's where a lot of injuries happen as well.
And you also see the effect on rookies this year, and they're not really able to make that much of a leap into making a lot of big plays in the NFL because they're just not used to NFL speed versus college speed where they were so dominant.
Yeah, certainly. And I don't actually think there's been that big of a kind of learning curve from the rookies so far. I certainly think a lot of the rookie receivers have been very quiet thus far for the most part, which is really surprising because that was by far the most hyped up position group going into this year in terms of rookies. Really surprised about how the quarterbacks have played. We'll get into it later. Justin Herbert played really well in his debut. And obviously Joe Burrow has been really good throughout his first 2 games. But besides that, I thought some of the linemen have been playing really good. I know Tristan Wirfs for the Buccaneers had a really good week 2 game. So again, I'm very impressed with some of the rookies out there. Certainly not Isaiah Simmons, though, who got about 15 snaps on Sunday again.
Yeah, I mean, also even going back to week one, C.J. Henderson of the Jaguars he
Yeah.
clamped up Ty a bit during the whole game. I mean, Ty has been very quiet, which is very scary as our number one receiver. But segueing into the week two matchups, you just talked about Justin Herbert making his debut because of Tyrod Taylor getting his lung punctured. So I guess he was getting a cortisone shot into the ribs for some bruised ribs, and his lungs were actually punctured by the trainer. So if I'm the Chargers organization, that man needs to get fired immediately. He should not be able to
Oh yeah.
administer shots if he's puncturing players' lungs. So that's another story. But so Justin Herbert got the nod for his first NFL snap. I mean, I think a lot of people thought it was going to be much later in this season if he was going to get playing time at all. But he went in there and he played great. I thought he played really well for it being his first NFL game. Just over 300 yards passing, 2 total touchdowns, 1 on the ground, 1 through the air. He did have 1 interception, but he was going toe-to-toe with Patrick Mahomes. They went right into overtime, and obviously the Chiefs won this game with Harrison Butker making, 3 50-yard field goals in a row because of penalty icing, and then the final one. But I was very impressed by this Chargers team. They looked completely different with Herbert at the helm.
Yeah, Bucker's a great kicker. And going back to the Tyrod Taylor story real quick, absolutely insane story just to have your team doctor puncture your lung right before kickoff, not be able to play, potentially lose your starting job because of this, potentially lose contracts down the road because of this, and potentially be out of the NFL because of this. I think that's really what at the point that Tyrod Taylor is at in his career. Really, with LA, this was his last chance to go into his season, in my opinion, to be a starting quarterback. And I don't think he's going to see that again after this kind of incident, which is just really sad. I know you can't sue NFL teams if you get something wrong with you from a team doctor. I know that's very strict under the CBA, even the new one, which sucks. So he's not even going to be able to sue out of this. And when I heard after the game the Chargers head coach saying if Tyrod is healthy, he's going to be our starter, at first I'm like, that is so stupid. Justin Herbert played great. You can't look back from one great rookie performance and kind of turn back to the veteran. That makes no sense. You just got to kind of roll with the rookie the rest of the ride and just see what he has the rest of the season. But kind of thinking about it a little more, I think just that the Chargers coach knows that, wow, our team doctor made it so that this player can't play. Just absolutely screw this guy out of a starting opportunity. That's the reason why I think Tyrod Taylor is going to be the starter in a couple of weeks when he's healthy, just because he really did get screwed out of that starting role, and I feel really bad for him for that. But kind of getting into Justin Herbert, he played absolutely phenomenal in this game. I mean, I know I was one of the people who were really low on Justin Herbert coming into the NFL, coming from Oregon, but I mean, he really did have a really good first game. I know he made a lot of rookie mistakes. His 1 interception was the absolute cardinal sin of quarterbacking, where you're rolling out to your left, then you throw a really deep pass across your body, kind of to the middle right of the field. And that was a really just bad interception. But besides that, I mean, I do think Keenan Allen, Mike Williams was making him look very good with some inaccurate passes being kind of reeled in. But I mean, we'll see with Justin Herbert. I'm really impressed with his first start, and it really couldn't have gone better, in my opinion.
I mean, it's pretty funny because you said he threw his interception about the Cardinals' sin, but I mean, I remember looking back to that Cardinals playoff game, Carson Palmer, the Cardinals' sin, and that's how they ended up winning that game, which is
It's true.
pretty ironic. But going back to Tyrod, I think, say he comes back in 4 weeks. I don't know what the timetable on puncturing the lungs is, but if the Chargers are rolling and they're undefeated with Herbert, how could you switch into Tyrod? I understand where Anthony Lynn's coming from. He doesn't want to just completely screw Tyrod over and take away the starting job from him. But there's a point when you're trying to win football games, and if Herbert can win you football games, you got to keep him in the lineup. That's like looking at the example of Lou Gehrig and Wally Pipp. Lou Gehrig took over the starting job, and Wally Pipp was screwed out of a job, and the Yankees didn't look back. I think at that point they can't look back with Herbert. I think they got to keep rolling with it.
No, absolutely. We've seen historically really great starting quarterbacks. Tony Romo, for example, he's not a great starting quarterback, but I mean, he was the Cowboys franchise quarterback for over a decade. He gets hurt, a couple great games from Dak Prescott, and you just can't look back. I mean, It's happened time and time and again in not only NFL history, but you just alluded to it in sports history. So certainly, if Justin Herbert can kind of make this avalanche and roll into another good start, another good start, another good start, and especially wins, good wins, incredible win, the win of the season for the Chargers, no doubt. I wouldn't even need hindsight looking back on the season to kind of say that because it was against the Chiefs and regardless, almost won that game. And certainly, I'm not going to take the Chargers head coach word for his or as a fact right now, just because things change week to week. And if Justin Herbert is the starter when Tyrod Taylor is healthy, I would not be surprised.
Yeah, and then kind of the overall image of this game, I think the Ravens are the best team in the AFC right now. I think the Chiefs didn't really play that great. Hill, he was kind of clamped a little bit by the defense, but I think the Ravens became the best team in the AFC with this performance by the Chiefs.
Yeah, I agree completely. And looking at this game, I was just kind of thinking to myself, and this is a topic for another day, but was Patrick Mahomes' first season, I know his second season, but his first starting season, his best season? Did he peak right then and there? Because he's still a great quarterback, don't get me wrong, but I just can't see him replicating that first season.
Yeah, I mean that's just one of the great seasons of all time, and just
Yeah.
he made so many great plays. This is hard for the bar to be set that high with his first season.
Yep.
Moving on to the next game, the Falcons versus the Cowboys. The Falcons continue to be Falcons by blowing a 20-point lead with, I believe, 7 minutes left in the second quarter.
Yep.
I mean, they were dominating the whole football game until it just one mistake after next. The Cowboys were rolling. Dak Prescott looked great. And I just don't understand how the Falcons keep blowing these huge leads.
Yeah, no, and I feel like this was a bad win for the Cowboys. And what I mean by that is because so many times in the Jason Garrett era of football, I saw just bad performance, bad performance. And then right when it was kind of like you need to win this game, they would kind of just squeak by in a game like this where they really shouldn't have even won. And then that kind of extended the life of Jason Garrett in Dallas. And this is exactly what I thought of when I saw the Cowboys absolutely getting smacked all game, and then they come roaring back for this insane 1-point victory where they score 40 points. And at the end of the season, even though the Cowboys are probably going to go 9-7, 8-8, Mike McCarthy could say, "Hey, look, my offense put up 40 points against the Falcons, and we won that really tight game. Hey, we won this game. Hey, we won that game." And then he's going to keep coaching for the Cowboys. And I strongly believe Mike McCarthy should get fired at some point in this season. I really, really do. I just think Jerry Jones needs to notice that this is the same team, different coach, and they're just not going to progress anywhere with Mike McCarthy as their head coach. But kind of going into this game a little bit, CeeDee Lamb played absolutely phenomenal. I mean, he already looks like kind of a seasoned vet out there. I know he did have a few mistakes week 1 and week 2. I know he had a really bad blindside block, but Michael Gallup, they certainly need to get him way more involved in the offense. And Amari Cooper played really well, but I mean, I think his average kind of depth of target was like 8 yards, so they certainly need to get him going a little bit more.
Yeah, I think Mike McCarthy, like you said, he's a very vanilla play caller. We talked about this last episode, how his time in Green Bay, it was just his success was based off Aaron Rodgers just continuing to play and making something out of nothing. But I mean, these Cowboys, both these teams really, like, their head coaches do not fit their teams. The Falcons don't know how to use Julio Jones, like, and when they're in the red zone, for some reason he's just invisible most of the game, and I think he's the best wide receiver in our generation. He just doesn't get used at all, which is just a waste of talent. Matt Ryan, always a great player, so efficient, never turns over the ball. I think that Dan Quinn needs to get fired soon. Like you said about Mike McCarthy, Dan Quinn needs to be fired soon for this Falcons team to turn around and become a playoff team that they were for so many years.
Yeah, I just don't understand why Dan Quinn is still the coach of the Falcons. I really don't. He's a defensive-minded coach who is horrible at coaching his defense. I mean, year in and year out, again, we see guys like Deion Jones on the defensive end for them. We see some really good pieces on this Falcons defense, and for whatever reason, they just find a way to let up 40 points in the second quarter beyond, which is just absolutely unacceptable. And I mean, this is just going to be another typical Falcons season, and it's just really disappointing to see. Again, such a waste of talent because you have a pretty good backfield. You have a good quarterback, an MVP quarterback. You have a really, really, really good receiving core, especially your first two guys are really good. Hayden Hurst is a really good tight end. And again, you have a solid enough defense to the point where you should be a playoff team, but doesn't look like they will be this year.
Yeah, I mean, if they haven't made the playoffs since they lost the Super Bowl, and they've had a great team every year since, and
Yeah.
that's when the owner. I'm blanking on the owner's name, but he needs to make the executive decision to cut loose from Dan Quinn. Moving on to the next game, I think this is a very important game, which is just the NFL hierarchy with the Seahawks versus the Patriots. I mean, it was a great game if you watched it, coming down to the
Yep.
last play, which another in this game between the Seahawks and the Patriots, we have another shaky play call at the end of the game that kind of has a lot of fans scratching their head. I think it was a Cam Newton draw on the say 3-yard line that he just got blasted by Jamal Adams in the Seahawks defense. But I mean, Russell Wilson is making the case for MVP really in the first 2 weeks. There's no one really
Mhm.
on his level right now. Do you agree?
Oh, certainly. I mean, there's so many key takeaways from this game. First off, I'm so happy this wasn't some random 1 o'clock game. I'm happy this was a primetime game because I hope everybody watched this game. This was a phenomenal game, but just so many individual takeaways from this game. Again, like you said, Russell Wilson, MVP candidate. I mean, he was dotting up the field all game, just incredible touch, just an incredible talent. Stephon Gilmore, my God, did he get roasted all game? He could not cover DK Metcalf to save his life. DK Metcalf playing absolutely phenomenal. His routes look sharper. He looks quicker. He looks stronger. He just looks really good. I mean, Cam Newton looked great, looked absolutely phenomenal. I know his arm is still limited. I know he still has limited arm talent, but he can certainly not only be a part of a playoff team, but I mean, really help you win games week in and week out. And I think that's what he proved in this very narrow loss against the Patriots. I can't believe Julian Edelman had his highest number of receiving yards
Yeah.
without Tom Brady. I think that's very hard to believe. When they said that, I was like, no way, that's true. My kind of last takeaway was Bobby Wagner has certainly lost a step or two on the football field. I mean, he used to be able to cover the entire field. He used to really be feared as the best middle linebacker in all of football, and he still is one of the best middle linebackers in football, but he certainly looked slow in that game, and I think he did even last year as well, watching him as a Cardinals fan, and just he just doesn't have the same kind of effect on the game he used to.
Yeah, I mean, looking back at DK Metcalf, you were talking about, I think for the first time in Russell Wilson's career, you can consider him to have a true number one wide receiver. I mean, I love
Yep.
Doug Baldwin, I love Tyler Lockett, but they're not really number one wide receivers. DK is a big body. He's faster than anybody else on the football field, and Russell Wilson, who has arguably the best deep ball in all NFL, can just have DK run down the field and then just drop it right in the basket like he did in that game with. I mean, that was an incredible catch. Gilmore had his arm across his body, and he still was able to make that catch. So I think Russell Wilson is happy with the weapons they're able to put around him.
Yeah, certainly. And kind of another takeaway from this game is as great of a defensive coordinator as Bill Belichick is, there's only so much you could
Yeah.
do from the sideline. At the end of the day, you need 11 players to work as a cohesive unit on defense, and you need them to do their job and perform up to the task you want them to. And simply, this Patriots defense is so gutted to the point where you have a bunch of no-name guys running around there, and they just could not execute their assignments consistently enough. They let up 35 points for a reason, not because of Bill Belichick, not because of the defensive scheme, but because of Russell Wilson and just kind of this defense's inability to be athletic, just and just they don't have good players on the defensive end, really.
I mean, you look from going last year, looking at the Patriots defense. I saw a stat once that they could have went like 10-6 if the defense was just playing. So their defense was pure
Yeah.
dominance last year till this year when I mean, it's hard for them to get off the field because they just can't stop. They can't stop anything.
Yeah, it's really incredible. And that's where I look at this Patriots team from a roster construction standpoint. And I simply don't understand why they don't invest in the running back position a little bit because I know it's a big, oh, we can find a running back anywhere, anytime. But I think it would really help this team out so much if they just had a really good running back to eat clock to help Cam Newton in the running game. And Sony Michel is so painfully average. Rex Burkhead is so painfully average. I know James White, rest in peace to his mother and father, I believe, but I know he's a good receiving back, but he's not going to kind of carry the load. So I want to see them make a big trade for a running back. Maybe not a superstar running back, but a good running back that could certainly carry this load and take their defense off the field.
Yeah, for the first time in a while, the Patriots never really have had a star at running back. I mean, they've had some kind of running back by committee and players that just seem to excel in their team. But looking right now, do you think this Patriots team is a playoff team?
They certainly look like it. If they played like they did tonight, I honestly, or not tonight, but when they did play on Sunday night, I think they could beat the Bills twice. Honestly, I think they looked better than that Bills team because you look at that kind of weak link on this Patriots team, and it does look like their defense a little bit, which is surprising, but I certainly don't think Josh Allen could take advantage of the weaknesses that this defense has. And then kind of on top of that, you're going to play a slow, kind of grinded out game with the Bills. So if it's closely, I do trust in Cam Newton more than I trust in Josh Allen. So I certainly think that these two teams are going to split their games. I think both teams will go 1-1 in their matchups. But I certainly do think the Patriots could even fight for a division spot at this point.
Yeah, I'm excited to watch those two matchups with the Bills and Jets because, I mean, let's face it, the Jets or the Bills are not Patriots, but the Jets and Dolphins are not making any noise in this division at all. The Jets just look flat out atrocious. Moving on to our last game that we're going to talk about, the Monday night game, the Raiders versus the Saints. The Raiders opening up their new stadium in Las Vegas. It looked awesome. Just looks like the Death Star. But this Drew Brees, I think the story of this game is Drew Brees looks shot. He looks like he's not an NFL quarterback anymore.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think me and you have been saying this for a long time, and I really think that Drew Brees extending his NFL career, not retiring this season, not retiring the last couple seasons, I think it's really, really hurting his legacy because I think everybody knows he's a great quarterback. He's an all-time quarterback. He's a Hall of Famer, put up these great numbers, but his Super Bowl was very, very, very long ago. I know you haven't forgotten it. I know it probably seems very recent in your memory, but for non-Colts fans, non-Saint fans, I mean, we don't even remember that Colts-Saints Super Bowl if you're a casual NFL fan. So, Drew Brees, I mean, the narrative around his career has been what it has been the last 5 years, in that once Drew Brees gets to the playoffs, his inability to have a good arm, throw the ball down the field, has really cost them playoff game after playoff game, and it cost them the game on Monday night, in my opinion. They just could not get the ball down the field. It seemed like Drew Brees, it took absolutely everything out of him to even complete a 15-yard out to their tight end. So, I mean, certainly looks really bad for Drew Brees, and he really needs to retire after the season.
That's what I mean. They're missing Michael Thomas, which that's why Thomas has all these catches because that's.
Yeah.
I mean, you can see that basically Drew Brees can only throw to him because Traquan Smith is more or less a deep ball threat.
Yeah.
Emmanuel Sanders is more or less a deep ball threat, so he can't get their ball in their hands and they're playmakers. So that's how they're going to lose football games. I mean, obviously, Kamara did a great damage against the Raiders in the receiving game because he was kind of that check down for Drew Brees, but the Raiders looked very, very good on offense. Mm-hmm. Derek Carr, who our week one predictions, I kind of slandered Derek Carr a little bit. I guess he must have heard me, but he looked good. He looked like the better version of Drew Brees because he wasn't able to throw down the field because that was more of a problem with Ruggs because Ruggs was open on a lot of plays and he wasn't really seeing them, but he was accurate on those short to intermediate passes, and that's where they gashed the Saints.
No, you're absolutely right. Derek Carr looked like a prime Drew Brees. He really did. But again, I do think – I'm sorry, Reese, for sleeping on the Raiders. I won't sleep on the Raiders anymore. Their offense is good. I think their defense certainly still has a lot of holes in it, but they're a very well-coached team all around, in my opinion. But, I mean, Derek Carr, just the inability to throw the ball down the field, or just the unwillingness to throw the ball down the field, because I think he could do it. I think he has the skill set. He has a really live arm. He has a good arm. I think he can throw the ball down the field. He just is so safe we're going to see week in and week out, he's going to have a really good completion percentage. He's going to have pretty good stats, but at the end of the day, it's stats like just average kind of throw in terms of yards. It's just not there with Derek Carr. They drafted Henry Ruggs for a reason, not to be a decoy, which he was in Monday Night Football, a great decoy at that. But that's to be that deep down the field threat, that home run hitter. And Derek Carr is not going to swing for the fences a lot. And that's really what I think John Gruden really wants him to do. But again, looking at this season specifically with Derek Carr for the Raiders, again, I don't think this defense is going to hold up against some really high-powered offenses, some offenses that aren't one-dimensional like the Saints are. But this offense, you have a really good backfield. Josh Jacobs, Richards. I really like their backups behind Josh Jacobs. Again, a good quarterback, a good offensive line, and really good receivers. You even have a guy like Nelson Aguilar who has more touchdowns than any receiver on the Eagles does right now. But, I mean, he gets open consistently. He makes guys miss consistently. He does everything very, very well as a receiver except catch the ball. But usually when it's those kind of short targets, that's not even that much of a problem with him. So this team just looks really good right now.
Yeah, so, was Nelson Aguilar the key to the Eagles' success? Because he leaves the Eagles, they become a dumpster fire, and then the Raiders are looking good. So, yeah, the points you brought up about Henry Ruggs is I'm in love with Henry Ruggs. I think he's one of the best wide receivers out of that draft class last year, and he's a playmaker. And if you're not able to get your ball in your playmaker's hand, it's gonna be hard to win football games. Fortunately enough, they have Darren Waller, who played great. They have Josh Jacobs, so they can kind of cover up not getting the ball to Henry Ruggs. But once you play kind of those better NFL teams, once, like, say they get in a matchup with the Chiefs, they need to get the ball in Henry Ruggs' hands because Mahomes is going to get the ball in his playmaker's hands. So they really need to get Ruggs involved more next week.
Yeah, it's a great point you just made, especially in the division that they are in. You have Drew Lock and some of the receivers over there. I mean, just absolutely home run hitters. Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, who's out for the year. KJ Hamler. I mean, you have the Chargers, who have some really great receivers as well. So for the Raiders, you're really going to need to kind of have more of an explosive offense. And that's just not the case with this offense right now. Even though it's very well balanced, they're kind of dinking and dunking their way down the field, really driving the ball really effectively. Josh Jacobs, I feel like it was either he got stuffed behind the line of scrimmage just because of his offensive line, or he had a really great 10-yard run. And a little bit more consistently, not from Josh Jacobs, in my opinion, but from the offensive line. This team's going to be pretty hard to beat.
Yeah, the Raiders, Gruden and Mike Mayock, they've obviously made some questionable moves with their draft pick, taking the players at the position they did, but they're slowly creeping into a sort of a win-now mode. They need to definitely fill some holes on defense and in that offense line, but they're slowly getting to the position that John Gruden talked about, building this team up.
Yep.
So moving on to the NBA, we're done talking about NFL. We're excited. Next episode, we'll talk about the Week 3 predictions. But the NBA, the Heat Celtics series is not really happening right now, but the Lakers Nuggets series is happening. So we'll talk about Game 2 first, and then get into a little bit of Game 3. So Game 2, Anthony Davis hit that massive shot to win the game. What did he yell? He yelled Kobe after the shot when he to all of his teammates, but that was a great playoff moment. And it just shows that when LeBron's teams are successful, it's not LeBron taking the game-winning shot. It's kind of his second fiddle taking a game-winning shot. Obviously, we saw that when he won the NBA Finals. Ray Allen made that shot to tie it up. Kyrie Irving hit the shot for the dagger. Now Anthony Davis is hitting this shot to win this game. So if LeBron has help, his teams are going to make the finals, and they're gonna most likely win the finals.
Yeah, certainly. No one's better than LeBron James and Anthony Davis right now in the playoffs. They are the two best players in the playoffs. I think Anthony Davis is even better than Nikola Jokic. I feel like he's even kind of going toe-to-toe with LeBron James in some nights, certainly. Not last night, but, overall, Anthony Davis has been incredible for the Lakers. This is why you trade so many assets for one player, and this is why it's a successful trade, because it's always the argument where, is a couple players going to make up for that one player's production? And that's certainly not the case. Lonzo Ball wouldn't have had as big of an effect on this game as Anthony Davis. Even if you add Brandon Ingram, Josh Hart, these draft picks, I mean, they simply would not be in the position they are right now without Anthony Davis. If you added all those players back to the team, they simply just would not be as good as they are right now. And right when Anthony Davis hit that shot, I said out loud, and it was probably an overreaction in the moment, but looking back on it, I really don't think it is. Anthony Davis is by far the best player LeBron James has ever played with, in my opinion. He really is. Dwayne Wade simply was not Dwayne Wade, even in 2011. I mean, we were saying, oh, how great he was in the 2011 finals. I mean, he averaged 23 points per game in the finals, wasn't that great defensively. Let Jason Terry run all over him. I mean, Kyrie Irving, great offensive player, but isn't a two-way player like Anthony Davis is. Anthony Davis just brings on both ends so hard, such a great defender, such a great offensive player, is such a just great compliment to LeBron James because LeBron James loves to find open teammates. He loves to run pick and rolls, and Anthony Davis is just such a compliment to that, and I'm just so happy Anthony Davis is on the Lakers.
Yeah, Anthony Davis was just so good on the Pelicans, and just once he has good players around him, that's when he's going to be able to perform because the best players kind of distribute their skills to the other teams and or the other players on the team, and they just rise up together. And you see this with the Lakers; they're playing great. But looking at the Nugget side, Jamal Murray and Jokic played great, obviously, but Michael Porter Jr. scoring only 15 points in Game 2. If we talked about how he was so great when in the regular season of the bubble,
Yeah.
but kind of he's been quiet in these playoff games. And for someone who's supposed to be the third star on this team to kind of take them to the next level of the NBA ranking of teams, I mean, he can't show up with 15 points in a massive playoff game.
Yeah, certainly. With Michael Porter Jr., again, I'm not surprised to see this out of him. He's a rookie. He's a very young player. I think after some of the comments he made about his players in terms of he wants to get other players involved, I certainly think that kind of rubbed coaching the wrong way. I think that rubbed some of his teammates the wrong way to the point where I do think he's getting less looks. And he certainly looks a little less aggressive, but I think he has looked slightly better on the defensive end. And again, I didn't think this was the year for the Nuggets. It certainly could. I mean, it's looking like it could be, certainly. But if Michael Porter could continue to develop and kind of become that guy, not a guy scoring 15 points in a vital game two, but scoring 25 points in a game two, scoring 20 points in game three, then certainly the Nuggets are going to be one of the best teams in the West like they are right now.
I mean, it's just, I don't know, it's a little scary for him to be so great in the regular season and then kind of just be quiet, be a little quiet in the playoffs when they need him the most. But going on to Game 3, the Denver Nuggets beat the Lakers by more than double digits, or not more than double digits. My math a little off by almost double digits. But LeBron played great, 30-point triple double. Anthony Davis was there in a scoring column, but 2 rebounds, so that kind of really hurt them. But looking at the other roster, I mean, Alex Caruso, 25 minutes, 2 points. I mean, the other people that they need to show up did not really show up in this game.
No, this is a typical Lakers loss. This is how the Lakers lose basketball games. You have your 2 great players playing great, and you shoot 20% from 3 like they did in Game 3. You have your other role players playing bad. And usually that's not even enough for the Lakers to lose because of how great Anthony Davis and LeBron James are. You need another 2 players on the other team to be great, which Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic were, but they still in Game 3 weren't as good as LeBron James and or Anthony Davis. So the key to the Nuggets' success in this series is going to be their role players stepping up. You need not only the Lakers' role players to play bad, but you need your role players to play really good. You have guys like Jeremy Grant scoring, 23 points in this game, 25 points in this game. That's how you're going to win games. You're going to have a random, really good scoring night from one of your role players, and that's certainly what they want Michael Porter Jr. to do. But that's something that Paul Millsap has done. That's something that Jeremy Grant has done. That's certainly how they're going to win basketball games in the series.
Yeah, I mean, they were able to neutralize Anthony Davis in the rebounding category. I mean, that's how Jokic dominated the Clippers last year. He was able to just out-rebound pretty much the whole team. But also Jamal Murray I think Jamal Murray's a star now. I think with
He
this
is.
playoff run, he kind of brought himself into a new light comparing himself to all other NBA players.
Yeah, Jamal Murray at this point, I mean, he averaged 18 points per game in the regular season. And he was one of those guys where he would get 30, he would get 40, he would get 25, then he'd score 8 points, then he'd score 6 points, then he'd score 10 points. And Jamal Murray's not that guy anymore. He certainly can't be that guy anymore because of what he's shown in this playoffs. He's that consistent 22, 23 point per game guy who is going to have an outburst for 30 games, 40 games. He's going to be one of those guys who is just really tough to defend because not only is his skill set so great, but let's say you double team him, let's say you trap him. I mean, Nikola Jokic, the best passing center in the league, one of the best passers, period, in the league, he's going to be right there on the baseline. You kick it to him, and he's certainly going to find the open man. So this Nuggets offense just looks like the Nuggets offense, which all year has been certainly great.
So, I mean, going into game 4 of this series, I mean, the Lakers, they do need to win it because they don't want to get in a close series with the Nuggets because, I mean, if the Nuggets start getting momentum, that's when it's been the downfall for the Clippers and then obviously the Jazz, the series before that. So I think the Lakers need to go out very strong in this series to kind of make it a 3-1 lead, but also in the back of their head, are they going to wonder, hey, we have a 3-1 lead now. What's gonna happen there?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, it's like what happens when just immovable object meets a hard place or whatever that expression is. That's kind of what is going to happen. I mean, LeBron James has been down 3-1. He's won while being down 3-1. I think he knows at this point what it takes to be down 3-1. So if he knows what it takes, I think he knows what it takes to stop that, to defend that. And that's just team chemistry, momentum, playing within each other and not too high, not too low. And I think they did get a little too high after that game 2 win because looking at the series, they very well could be down 2-1. I mean, they're one big shot away from being down 2-1 in the series. And I certainly think they were celebrating a little bit too much after that game 2 victory. I saw everyone celebrating. Then I saw a camera shot of Rajon Rondo literally not caring whatsoever what's just happening, just walked back to the locker room and didn't even acknowledge his teammates, which is a little bit concerning in terms of team chemistry, but just kind of looking
Just
at the
Rondo being
series.
Rondo.
Yeah, I think that's just Rondo being Rondo. But looking at the series, if Danny Green hits some more shots, if Alex Caruso hits some more shots, if Caldwell Pope hits some more shots, I mean, they would have won game 3 and they're going to win the series.
Yeah, I still think they're going to win the series, and probably I think they're going to win the NBA Finals this year, and LeBron will be able to get his another trophy in his trophy case.
Yeah, and I've seen a really interesting conversation kind of emerge where I see so much over like NBA Twitter, NBA Instagram in terms of people talking and saying, "Oh, if Anthony Davis averages 40, 11 and 5 in the finals, LeBron's still going to win the finals MVP." And that's not true at all. That's simply just not true because if you look at who votes for the finals MVP, it's the same people who vote for MVP. It's the same people who have been voting for these awards all these years. And we've seen kind of the unwillingness for the media to vote LeBron into some of these accolades, especially defensive team this year. I mean, I thought that was absolutely egregious. I did think that Giannis Antetokounmpo deserved MVP, but for LeBron not to be on a defensive first team or second team, I think that's an absolute joke. So I certainly think if Anthony Davis legitimately outperforms LeBron James in the finals, I think he will walk home with the finals MVP.
Yeah, I completely agree. I can definitely see Anthony Davis winning the NBA Finals because MVP because I mean a lot of these games it's been the MVP has been Anthony Davis in a lot of these playoffs games for the Lakers. But thank you everybody for listening. Tune into our next episode for our Week 3 NFL picks, and see you in the next one.